Aloha and welcome everyone to the Fit2Fat2Fit Experience Podcast. It's me, your host, Drew Manning, and thank you guys for tuning in to another episode here on the podcast. Today's guest is Zach Ranen, and he is the creator and co-founder of a new protein bar company called David Protein. This protein bar is the only protein bar with the highest amount of protein per calorie. And basically what it is, I recently found these guys through a bunch of TikTok ads, and the founder reached out to me. He was the founder of RX Bar, and his NDA expired, and he decided to get back into the protein bar industry, but with a new twist on a protein bar. So basically, this new protein bar has 28 grams of protein, only 150 calories, 2 grams of fat, and I think 1 or 2 grams of net carbs. This is new to the protein bar industry. Most protein bars that you've heard of or are aware of probably have about 40 to 45% of their calories coming from protein, whereas David Protein Bar has over 70% of their calories coming from protein. So they did the impossible. And we dive into the story of how Zach and Peter, joined forces and how they created this bar and the new kind of technology that goes into this. If you know protein bars, you know that to get those types of macros are near impossible. And to make the bar palatable and taste good, they nailed it. They really did. Their 4 flavors, cake batter, chocolate chip, cookie dough, blueberry pie, and double fudge, all of them are amazing. They did a really good job with the ingredients, clean ingredients. You'll be very, very pleasantly surprised with how much protein is in them. And we dive into how they formulated this, because there's other companies out there that I've been fans of for years. And I think people are just kind of like not sick of the same old, but I think people are wanting something new, and these guys capitalize on it. So we dive deep into the story and the science behind these new David protein bars. But before we jump in, a couple quick announcements. If you are interested in coming to Hawaii for 5 days at one of my conscious fitness retreats, there are still some spots available for the February 2025 retreat. February 10th through 15th, February 10th through 15th, 2025. There are 6 spots left available. Basically, you'll come out here for 5 days with a group of about 10 to 12 other people that are looking to improve themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. We'll be doing some really fun excursions. We'll be swimming with the manta rays here on the Big Island. We will be doing some cliff jumping. We'll be going to some amazing beaches. We'll be doing some beautiful hikes. And we'll be doing a lot of healing. We'll be doing breath work and yoga and meditation, workouts. It's a really profound, powerful experience. Just go to my social media to check it out. Go to consciousfitnessretreat.com. That's Conscious Fitness Retreat. There's a link in the show notes. And you can apply there. And once you fill out the application, I will reach out to you to schedule a one-on-one Zoom call with me to see if this is a good fit. And then from there, we're looking for 6 other people right now. There's 6 spots left available for the February 2025 retreat. So if you're feeling called to do it, just go to consciousfitnessretreat.com. Or if that's not your cup of tea, I am opening up spots for my Conscious Fitness membership, which is group coaching with me and this conscious fitness approach. In a private WhatsApp group, and it's a monthly membership, and you can access that in the show notes as well. Click on that link, and I think we're doing a big Black Friday deal, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, let's go hang out with Zach Ranen. All right, Zach, welcome to the show. How are you doing today, man?
Thanks, Drew. Happy to be here. Look forward to chatting some more.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you here as well. Just a little bit of backstory for the listeners. It's so funny because I've been in the fitness industry for 13 years now, and I've worked with lots of different like protein bar companies, and it was so interesting I got reached out by your business partner, Peter, right? Is that his name?
Yep.
Yeah, and he's like, "Hey, I got this new protein bar," and he's like, "It's called David," and I'm like, that's such a weird name. Like, why is it named after just the name David? I was like, maybe, I don't know. I had no idea. So it was really cool to hear the story of why David, and we'll get into all of that. But first of all, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, Zach, and introduce who you are and your story too, of like how you kind of stumbled into this, because this isn't you didn't grow up thinking I'm going to start a protein bar company. So tell us a little bit about your backstory and how you got here.
Absolutely. So my name's Zach Ranen. president and co-founder at David. I'm originally from Baltimore, and all growing up, I thought that I wanted to work in finance. I was a very cool middle schooler who told his parents that he wanted to be a hedge fund manager when he grew up. And all kind of leading up to my career, I centered my resume and my college aspirations around kind of being an investor. So went to school at UPenn and studied finance there, and
Hmm.
then went to New York to work at an investment firm out of college. And about a year into that, after kind of the glam of feeling like I achieved my goal and living in New York, making money, meeting important people kind of started to wear off. I thought
Hmm.
more about, do I actually like what I'm doing? And I realized that I really didn't. And it was a bit of one, a lack of cultural fit, and two, a lack of real alignment around the work being a passion of mine. And
Mm.
on the cultural side, finance is the type of industry where it's very hierarchical, where
Yep.
you do what the person above you tells you to do. And there's not really great debate over ideas. It's much more seniority based.
Yeah.
And on the kind of quality of work side, I really enjoyed learning about new businesses and new industries, but there was also a lot of tedious work that wasn't very stimulating.
Hmm.
And I took those two things and gave myself a couple constraints for what I wanted to do next. The
Okay.
first was, I want to be in a job where I do work that I feel is valuable. And that meant probably either work at an early stage company or start one myself. And
Hmm.
then on the actual what I was doing side, I wanted to make sure that I was spending my time every day doing something that I would have been thinking about if I were just interested in learning about a topic.
Mm. Love that.
So I realized I would come home from work every day and I would spend an hour on YouTube watching videos on how to lose fat, how to change my diet to increase muscle or lose fat, how to create healthier versions of traditionally unhealthy foods. And funny enough, that is when I came across your Fit2Fat2Fit series that I watched on YouTube a few years back. Um, and I realized that, that was the space that I wanted to be in.
Hmm.
So I ended up leaving my finance job and opening a low carb bakery, which really combined my interests of health, fitness, food, and business building. And
Hmm.
set up a kitchen, set up a website, started shipping cookies around the country, paired up with a
Wow.
pastry chef to develop the recipes, and really got it together over the course of 6 months or so, from leaving my finance job to launching sales of that business.
Yeah.
It was a super interesting time, really cool 2 years, and I grew the business to the point where we were kind of outgrowing that commercial kitchen that we first set up in New Jersey and needed to raise money to kind of get to the next stage of the business, which was moving to a scaled manufacturer and trying to set the product up better for retail success. So
Mm.
that meant a bit of a reformulation to extend the shelf life and to
Sure.
make it more easily machinable. Uh, in that time, one of the investors that I pitched said, "Hey, we're not interested in your cookie business, but we want to introduce you to our friend Peter Rahal."
Ooh.
And at the time, Peter, who is now my co founder, had just had his non compete expire after selling a brand that he founded in 2012 called RX Bar.
Yeah. Huge
I'm
brand.
sure a bunch of folks are familiar with that one. It
Hmm.
was the first kind of few ingredient paleo friendly protein bar. And if you don't recognize the brand name, you probably recognize the packaging, which was
Hmm.
really a lot of what they were known for, which was basically like three egg whites, five dates, seven peanuts, no BS,
Yeah.
and just really great messaging. And he grew that brand in a great way and sold it to Kellogg in 2017. Um, so for the 5 years after that, he was sort of figuring out what he wanted to do next after as well. And we came together in the summer or spring of 2023, got to know each other, and started talking about, if we were to go into this protein bar space together, what would we want to do differently?
Hmm.
And as we looked at the market, we saw a couple things. One was it's super saturated.
Yes. Very
But the
true.
second was, in contrast to that, it didn't feel very competitive. And I
Yep.
know those like don't seem congruous, but by that we meant there were a ton of bars out there, which I'm sure you have seen.
Yep.
But there are not a lot of bars that really fulfill the promise of what a protein bar could or should be in a way that we thought they could. So, to us, a protein bar should be just that, as much protein and as little anything else as possible. So we saw on the market bars that were the leading in sales, but had maybe 40 to 45% of their calories coming from protein.
True.
So when you're eating those bars, the leading bars on the market, you're actually getting less protein by calorie than other macronutrients from a protein bar. So
Yes.
that we felt could be done better. And we aligned on this concept of creating what eventually became David, which was, let's make a bar that has the most protein per calorie of anything on the market that will help people increase muscle and decrease fat by increasing protein intake and lowering calorie intake. So we spent the past year working on recipes and R&D, and finally came out with what was David in September of 2024.
Yeah, man, what a great story. I'm going to dive into all of that because I have so many questions about how you guys came up with that idea and how you guys were able to nail it as well. A lot of people don't know this about me, but I actually started out my career in finance as well. I was a financial analyst, and then I did the whole fit to fat to fit thing, so I can relate to you with the whole finance thing and not really knowing if that was your purpose. It's kind of like, oh, this seems like a good industry to be in, but then it's like maybe my passion is in other areas. So that's when I did Fit to Fat to Fit. But getting back to your story, the bakery, I'm really curious. Was this like a low sugar bakery approach? Was this keto? Was it paleo? Was it gluten free? Was it high protein bakery? Like what was the type of foods that you were making that had some success?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first kind of entry into the nutrition world was through sort of a keto centric
Okay.
rabbit hole on YouTube.
Okay.
And my first entry into like changing my diet and really focusing on healthy eating was through the lens of keto. And that led me to say to myself, like, man, I'm really craving dessert. There are a million vegan or gluten-free bakeries in New York City. Why isn't there a low sugar keto friendly bakery?
Yeah.
And that led me to start baking cookies in my apartment myself, giving them to friends, giving them to family, eating them a bunch myself. And then eventually I said, hey, if like I'm liking this that much, I'm sure there are a bunch of other people doing a similar diet to me who are interested in a product like this and haven't been able to find it. So that was the impetus for what we did at the bakery, which was called Raise. And everything was 1 gram of net carbs in all of our
Wow.
cookies. And I think we were really doing keto cookies in a better tasting way than anyone else out there. But what happened over time was I actually found myself stopping eating the product after a year and a half or so. And I was like, man, this is kind of problematic. Like, I'm running a business and I'm telling people to believe in this product, but I'm actually realizing that maybe it's not the panacea for diet and weight control that I really thought that it was.
Yeah.
And I kind of self-assessed what I was missing. And I realized, the reason that I wasn't eating more of my own cookies was because, yes, they were super low carb and zero added sugar, but they were still the calories of a regular cookie
Yep.
without a lot of protein.
Yep.
And I was not able to fit them into my diet on a super regular basis when I was trying to focus on eating sufficient protein, but not overeating calories. So
Yeah.
they checked the minimize added sugar consumption box, but they didn't check the more protein, fewer calories.
Yeah.
And that's what I realized I really wanted to fix in the next product that I created.
So I'm so glad you brought this up because I was in the keto space for a lot of years. I wrote a book on the keto diet, and I'm a big fan of it. And when any diet becomes popular in the mainstream world, you're going to have comfort products come out. Cookies, pizza, ice cream, things like that. And what I saw and what people don't realize is that yes, these are keto cookies. There are low sugar and low net carbs, which is great. That's the goal you're trying to achieve. But the most of the calories are coming from fat, which is calorically dense, 9 calories per gram. And if a keto cookie at 300 calories or how many ever calories are in it is still a cookie at the end of the day. And so like if you're having 2 or 3 of them thinking, hey, I'm in ketosis, I should be burning all this fat, but you're not able to see the results. I think a lot of people fall into this trap. And that same thing happens with veganism or even in the paleo world. Like there's a lot of like convenience products and comfort foods that are, fit into that category now that people think, oh, I could eat this as many as I want, or, kind of have an abundance and like, why am I still not losing weight? So I'm so glad you brought that up because I think it's super important for people to realize that, yes, there's a time and place for it. But I think people in the American culture, we kind of overdo it because it's a Friday night, we want a cookie, or watching the game, we want a cookie, or there's so many ways to celebrate with food in our culture, and it can be challenging. So I'm really glad you brought that up. I'm really curious to know.
Yeah. And
Oh, go ahead.
one more point on that, Drew, is
Hmm.
a real evolution in how I thought about nutrition was specific diets can work and be extremely effective, but ultimately the reason they work and are effective is because they are tools for caloric restriction.
Yes.
So the reason that keto can be such a great diet for people is because it takes away some of the ultra palatable foods that bring a lot of calories without satiety.
Yep.
So it's not necessarily magic around low net carbs and being in ketosis. It's the fact that you're eating cleaner and better food that's leading you probably to have a better macronutrient distribution around sufficient protein and not overeating calories, which will ultimately keep you in a caloric deficit while maintaining muscle mass and leading to better body composition. So if you can achieve that by doing keto, please go do
Awesome.
keto. If you can achieve it by doing a low fat diet, like I wouldn't have said this 3 years ago, but now I'm like, yeah, like if you can caloric restrict while eating sufficient protein in a low fat diet, like that's great too. And I think that can be very freeing for people
Yep.
because it means you don't necessarily need to be overly restrictive with certain rules. If that's helpful for you and effective, please do it. But if you can generally keep the principles in mind of eat foods that are filling and satiating for you and make you feel good, eat sufficient protein, don't eat too many calories, and minimize added sugar consumption, you're probably on a really good path to a diet that's going to help you manage your body composition.
Yeah, those 3 things right there are key when I work with my clients. Like drilling that in their head of the importance of reducing calories, feeling satiated, and getting in enough protein. That right there is like the perfect formula for the most part for most people when it comes to achieving the body composition that you want, which is why most people tend to do keto or other diets is because they want that. But I actually did this as an experiment during my second Fit2Fat2Fit journey in 2020, where I showed people, like, as I was gaining weight, when I was putting on the fat, I did a keto experiment where I kind of did a dirty keto experiment, if you will, and I put on quite a bit of weight during that experiment, where I just ate all the keto junk foods just for, like, I think a week or so, and tracked my lipids before and after, and tracked my body fat percentage. And sure enough, you can eat too many calories on keto. It's not this
Yeah.
magic bullet, right? I want to jump ahead to your story when you got introduced to Peter. What was it at that? Because you said your investor kind of introduced you to him. What was it that you feel you brought to the table and he brought to the table that combined you guys could do something together? Like, what was
Yeah.
what was it on your end and his end that made this like a perfect combination?
Yeah. So Peter is a really great creative thinker and strategist. And he is also sort of the like wise person in the room who's seen it and done it before. So
Mm,
he has the experience, and he has a way of thinking that is really strong at identifying market opportunities.
okay.
Um, what I add to where he is less strong is like really strong executional capabilities. So if we had to distill it into two sentences, it would be Peter is more creative and less reliable, and I am more reliable and less creative. And together, we make a really good combination of, if Peter's saying, "Hey, team, let's go like steer the ship to Asia," I'll say, "Yep, let's go land at this port on this day, and we're going to go this far each day." And I think we each bring a very complementary skill set to running David.
So what was that like when you guys first met and you guys were like, okay, let's join forces, but then not really have an idea yet of what you were going to do? Did you already know going into it, like, hey, let's join forces and create a low calorie, high protein bar that doesn't exist out there? Or when did that happen and how did that, come about?
Yeah, so when Peter and I first met, um, neither of us were necessarily sold on the idea of bringing a new bar to the market.
Okay.
Um, what our conversations were really centered on was what's currently out there and what do we not like about it? And does that lead to a need that we think we can fill? So when we first started chatting, it was really just like a working session of let's go log every bar in the market uh, in order of like what we see them in terms of popularity,
Okay.
and let's see like what do they bring to the table, and then let's think about why do we not eat more bars, or what do we wish bars were different, or how do we wish bars were different. And that pretty quickly led to this concept of like, well, I don't eat bars because if I want protein, I go get beef jerky, or if I want protein, I go get turkey breast. And Peter saying something similar, and that he would eat more bars if they were different texturally in certain ways. And all of those thoughts kind of came together to, all right, clearly there's an opportunity here for that people are looking for more protein and fewer calories from our anecdotal assessment. Then we say, all right, does this seem to map to what consumers actually do? And from a more qualitative perspective, if you go watch someone walk down a protein bar aisle in the grocery store, they pick up a bar and the first thing they do is flip it over and look at calories, protein, and sugar in that order.
Hmm. Yep.
Then, if you take a look at the data, you see that the top two selling protein bars on the market are Quest and Bear Bells, and they have two of the top three protein to calorie ratios of any of the bars on the market.
Yep.
So clearly, this protein to calorie ratio concept is what resonates with consumers. So then the question became, do we think we can do it better?
Yeah.
And when we dove into that, we thought there was a clear opportunity with really great ingredients that were not being leveraged in a way that they could have or should have been in the protein bar space that could allow us to create a really differentiated product. And that gave us the confidence to go set out and start on development.
That's exactly what I want to drill down on is these other companies, looking from an outside perspective, probably have thought of like, okay, how can we create this, with higher protein, less calories? I'm sure other companies have thought of this, but it seems like with the ingredients that were available and the formulas that existed, the lowest I've seen is like 6 grams of fat per bar. How do you make a protein bar mostly with whey protein palatable, not chalky, with less fat, less calories, higher amount of protein? I'm assuming these other companies have taken a stab at it and have been unsuccessful, or just like, hey, this does not taste good because, So what were the things that you guys saw ingredient wise, maybe that these other companies just maybe weren't seeing or didn't execute on, that you guys were like, hey, there's an opportunity here. We think we can make this bar with less calories, more protein, and make it palatable, not chalky, not dry. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like, tell me about that
totally.
process, if that's okay.
Yeah. So when we take a look at the design of the bar, there are three macronutrients that go into making up the caloric impact. The first is protein.
Yep.
We don't want to minimize that. We want to
Yeah.
maximize that. So we want
Okay.
as many calories from that as possible. So, like, keep that alone. Don't do anything crazy with it outside of optimize the blend of protein so that
Mm,
we can, one, ensure the highest PDCAAS possible, which
okay.
stands for PDCAAS, and
What's
that
that?
is the protein digestibility corrected amino acid score. So in
That's funny.
English,
Yeah.
what that means is uh, on a scale of 0 to 1.0, with 1.0 being the highest, it's a measure of the quality of the protein you're intaking for muscle protein synthesis.
Okay.
So a 1.0 means you are as good as it gets. All of those amino acids that you're ingesting can be used for muscle protein synthesis.
Okay.
Things that are 1.0 would be uh, whey protein, milk protein, casein protein, which are all dairy proteins.
Yep.
Egg white protein is a 1.0. Um, Beef is a 0.92. So pretty high, but not quite a one. And then you'll see as you get lower, you get to more like plant sources. So
Yep.
that's pea protein isolate would be up 0.8. Peanuts would be about a zero point 0.5. Wheat protein would be like a zero point 0.3. And then you have protein like collagen, which can be beneficial for certain things, but not for muscle protein synthesis, and that's 0 on the PDCAAS scale.
Mm,
So uh, the PDCAAS is really a measure of if you were only eating that protein, what percentage of the grams of protein that you're intaking can be used for muscle protein.
got it.
So we wanted to ensure, one, that the PDCAAS is a 1.0 as high as possible,
Yep.
and two, that this protein blend that we're creating creates a good texture that's not chalky within the bar.
Yeah.
So interestingly, you'll see if you look at the protein blend that we created, it actually has collagen in it as an example, because
Yep.
collagen can be really helpful for the texture of the bar, but we still have
Smart.
that 1.0 PDCAS. And the reason that we can achieve that is because collagen lacks, in particular, the amino acid tryptophan, and that's
Mm,
what makes it a 0 on the 1.0 or on the PDCAAS scale. So we use other proteins that are particularly high in tryptophan to balance out the lack of tryptophan from collagen. So that in total, when you combine the proteins together, the amino acids come together for that 1.0 score.
got it. So the collagen is more of like for the texture.
Yeah,
for the most part.
exactly.
Okay, cool. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
And then the nice thing is we can, without compromising muscle protein synthesis from the
Yeah,
28 grams of protein, we can also give you the benefits of like hair, skin, nail, joint amino acid
yeah,
profile that some people are looking for as well. So that's the
100%.
protein blend.
Okay.
Next, you take a look at fat and carbs. Those are the
Yep.
two other sources of calories that you want to minimize as much as possible. So, taking a look at carbohydrates in a traditional protein bar from like version one of protein bars back in the 80s, this would be like brown rice syrup or high fructose corn syrup, like
Yep.
something that's like straight up glucose and fructose and sugar, and you're getting 4 calories per gram of carbohydrate.
Yep.
Uh, for us, we led with allulose as the main ingredient of our binding system.
Okay.
Uh, and in general, allulose, fiber, polyols, they can all contribute to uh, binding of the bar and creation of a good mouthfeel and contribute to sweetness without contributing the typical calories that you would get from a carbohydrate. So, as an example, allulose per gram is zero point 0.4 calories. So, that's 1/10 the
Yeah.
calories of a traditional carbohydrate. The fiber that we use is 1 calorie per gram. So that's a quarter of the caloric impact that a typical gram of carbohydrates would have. So
Okay.
when you take all of that, our binding system together is only contributing 20 calories to the bar.
Wow. Yeah,
So
and I'm a big fan of allulose, by the way. I love allulose as a sugar substitute. I think it's the closest to sugar out of all
yeah,
the like
really good one.
erythritol and stevia, different aftertastes and things like that. So awesome.
Mhm.
Okay, sorry, keep going.
And then the last piece is the fat system.
Yeah.
So a traditional protein bar is using things like uh, palm oil or almonds or other nuts or cocoa butter. And they're using these fats to create one, a good mouthfeel. So fat is like super important for a moist mouthfeel and to prevent like dryness in your mouth.
Yep.
Uh, Two, it's super important for texture over time. So if you have a bar that's super low in fat, it'll kind of become a brick over
Yeah.
time, like very hard to chew. You've probably
Yeah.
experienced that with bars.
Sure.
Um,
Yep.
and and the third thing that it's important for that the consumer doesn't see as much is machinability. So if
Okay.
you don't have enough fat, you can often have your product like sticking to the mixer or the conveyor belts or the packaging, and it creates a lot of production issues. So you need a fat like material in there, but you want to minimize fat calories. And fat calories are super important to minimize because 1 gram of fat is 9 calories compared
Yeah.
to 1 gram of protein or carb, which is 4 calories. So every gram of fat is very impactful to the caloric uh, makeup of the bar. So whereas another bar may use a traditional fat, we've centered our fat blend around a fat that is not digested by humans, so it doesn't have that caloric impact, but it still has that mouth feel.
Hmm.
So essentially, you can get the benefits of a fat without digesting the calories within that material. So it's actually a really cool process where if you if you can picture what a fat molecule looks like, and I'll kind of like use my hand to help here. A fat
Sure.
molecule is a glycerol backbone
Okay.
with three tails of fatty acids. That's why it's called a triglyceride.
Okay.
Glycerol backbone with three tails of fatty acids. What they do with this fat is they snip off the fatty acid chains from the glycerol backbone. So now you just have glycerol backbone.
Okay.
They like insert something now in between the glycerol backbone and the three fatty acids, and then they sync them back together. And now, when your stomach lipases go to try and digest this fat molecule, it won't let your stomach lipases snip off the fatty acids from the chains at the end of this fat molecule. So it just passes through your digestive system without absorbing the calories.
Wow. So even though there's like 2 grams of fat in your bar, that's 18 calories. You're saying that it's not processed as the same 18 calories if it was butter or
So
vegetable
there
oil.
would, so the 2 grams, that is net of the digestible impact. So that 18 calories,
Oh,
that's what gets digested. And then
got it.
there's actually more than 2 grams of fat like material within the bar, but only two of it actually gets digested. And the two is not necessarily all from this non digestible fat. It's from, for example, we have a little bit of coconut oil in the bar
That's
too.
right. Yeah,
We
coconut oil.
have like the proteins that we use will have like small amounts of fat in them. The cocoa powder that we use will have a little bit of fat in it. So that's what all adds up to the 2 grams. But this fat-like material that doesn't get digested is actually contributing like nearly 0 calories. It's only 0.7 calories per gram compared to a 9 calorie per gram traditional fat.
Wow. So is this something that's used in other products, or is this like kind of revolutionary? Is this kind of like a new?
It's a pretty new ingredient to the market, used in a couple other products in addition to ours. But we've really partnered with them to try and help bring this to market in a broader way, because we really feel like tools like this are what can help change
Yeah,
processed food into good for you processed food in a
yeah,
way that hasn't been done before. And what our goal is here is, it's not to say, for example, that like you shouldn't eat other high quality protein sources or you
sure.
should replace your diet with David. But it
Yeah,
is to say, like, hey, if you're eating an otherwise really good diet, but you need to add another 30 grams of protein or 60 grams of protein into your day with 1 or 2 bars, then like this is a really good tool to do it while minimizing the calories that you're adding. So, like we think this ingredient is just like an awesome way to push forward the world of processed food into
sure.
processed but also good for you food.
Yeah, that gives you the likeness of something that maybe has more fat in it, but it doesn't impact you the same way. And so you don't have to label that. It's not technically considered a fat, right?
We So it's not labeled on the nutrition fact panel as a fat,
Okay,
but it is in our ingredient list.
got
So
it.
the 2 grams of fat will not include all of the grams of this fat like ingredient, but you will see it on our ingredient statement in what we call our fat system.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one thing I like about the way it's laid out is you have your protein system, your fat system, and then I don't know what the other one's called, carb system or
Binding system. Yep.
binding system. Okay, got it. And that's a really cool way to label your product because then you kind of know what ingredient is going to what aspect of or what macronutrient of the bar. So okay, so this is really interesting to me because I had no idea this this much was going into it, and I didn't know. And so okay, so your bar, all of them as of right now have 150 calories, 2 grams fat. I don't know the carb content or the net carbs, but the
Uh,
protein is
14,
28.
13 to 14 total grams of carbs with 1 to 2 grams of net carbs, depending on the flavor.
Okay, because there's X amount of fiber and okay,
Allulose.
allulose. Okay, got it. Um, which is remarkable, right? That's like unheard of in the protein bar world. Like, there's no other bars that have that much protein, that little calories, and that little fat. And so, and I'm assuming, like, okay, so who came up with the name David, and how did that come about?
Yeah, so uh, David takes its namesake from Michelangelo's masterpiece.
Yes.
And we feel like the name is a reflection of our approach to idealism and our dedication to creating a perfect product. So it's a bit of our not so humble way of saying that we think our bar is a masterpiece and that it's a feat in the protein bar space.
Yeah, it is, and I've seen other people, other influencers, ads on TikTok and stuff like that with other people saying, "Wow, like that you guys really nailed it." And this is why I actually ordered some by myself just to be like, "Okay, everyone else is talking about this. I've heard of these bars. There's something to them that I gotta figure out if this is worth it or not." So I just ordered my own, and sure enough, man, you guys nailed it. You guys did a really good job, and it's really cool to see some innovation in this industry. That I mean, yeah, there's different flavors, there's different textures, there's different ingredients here and there, but like you said, for the most part, they're pretty much the same. They're about 200 calories, 40 to 45% of the total calories are coming from protein. And yeah, it's hard to find a bar that has these types of macros that be like, but it probably doesn't taste good, or the texture is probably super dry and chalky. And everyone that's tried them has been amazed. The other question that I have really quick is, what are the crispy things in each one of them? Each of them has like a crisp or a crunch, like it's really satisfying. What is that?
I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you.
Okay, well maybe you can kind of give a general answer of like
I
something like they're crunchy. They're
Yeah,
like they're not nuts.
yeah. So one thing that was really intentional from us was creating what we call dynamic textural contrast,
Yeah.
and it's the same concept for why Americans can eat cereal and milk for breakfast every day and never get bored of it. And it's because the first bite is different from the last bite. And whenever you do take a bite, your initial bite experience changes as you chew it.
Yeah.
So, I like different textures and interesting textures are super important for how we perceive our enjoyment of food. And to us, we wanted every bar to have at least three textures. So every bar has kind of the soft and chewy-ish dough base.
Yep.
It has the crispy bits inside, and it has kind of like the smooth and creamy chocolate-like chunks.
Yep.
And the texture design was very intentional to keep it interesting within each eating experience and to make you feel like you're excited about the next time to eat the bar as well. Because by the time you got to the end of the first one, you weren't totally bored by the
Yeah.
eating experience. And I
Yeah.
think that's the reason that, you see when Quest Bar came out originally in 2013, it was like, the hot thing, but then 10 years later, like people who used to love Quest bars say, like, man, I can't even look at these anymore. I used to eat them all the time. And it's because like people just get bored of textures. So
Yeah.
keeping it more texturally interesting over time is really helpful for kind of the longevity of a product life cycle.
Yeah. And I'm assuming we got some of that information from the processed food industry. I'm assuming with
Yeah.
testing, and
Yeah.
so you're taking a playbook out
Exactly.
of or a play out of their playbook. But it's smart, especially doing it with healthier ingredients. So I love that. What is your favorite flavor and why? And the next question I have is, where do we go from here? I'm assuming you guys will eventually, hopefully, come out with new products as well. But I'm not sure if
Yeah.
you talk about that.
So my favorite flavor is I go back and forth a lot. I think it's cake batter,
Okay.
and to me, it like kind of has Rice Krispie treat vibes with the crunchy bits inside, and I just love that like sweet vanilla cake profile. I'm also a big fan of the chocolate chip cookie dough.
Okay, good. We're on the same page because those are my two favorites so far, and in that order:
Nice.
cake batter, and then chocolate chip. And the other ones, the blueberry pie and the double fudge one, are still good. I'm not saying those ones aren't good, but those I prefer the cake batter one. There's something about
Yeah,
that. So,
it's great.
and then next question:
Where do we go? So
new
right
flavors,
now,
new products.
yeah, right now we are 100% focused on protein bars. And to us, winning the protein bar segment is what gives us the right to go expand and create other products in the future.
Mm,
So For example, like the reason that Quest can go make chips and protein powder and protein pizza and cookies is because they really nailed the protein bar 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And we want to make David known as the company that you go to if you want whatever version of what you're eating with the most protein per calorie that you can find anywhere. And the way we make that name for ourselves is by building that reputation in bars, really creating an amazing experience and a differentiated product that people come back to over time. And then once we feel like we've kind of done what we should do in bars, we can start looking to other food segments to kind
Yeah.
of create better products there as well. But right now, like for us, we think there's just so much opportunity in bars, which I think is signified by one, just like the current size of the market is large. Like
Yeah.
there's billions of dollars worth of protein bars being consumed in the US each year.
Yeah.
But not only that, we have over 25% of our customers uh, on our website in a post purchase survey say that they were not protein bar consumers prior to David.
Oh,
So not only are we kind of bringing other protein bar consumers over to David, we're bringing new people into the category because they're seeing a product that is fitting their nutrition goals or their product interest goals that they haven't seen in the category before.
wow. That's impressive. That's really impressive, to be honest with you. That's really hard to do. So, just want to say congratulations. Like seriously, I'm so glad you came on the podcast and shared your story and shared about your brand. And I'm excited to see where this goes because, like I mentioned to you, like I was in the early days with Quest, like seeing what they were creating, and I'm like, man, this is revolutionary. And I was excited to see how they grew and just to see where they've gone since then. Obviously, and I know that you and your partner Peter, with his expertise with RX Bar, like you guys have the track record and you guys have the know-how, and so I'm excited to see where this goes. So I'm grateful that in the beginning stages you're able to come on my podcast and and share with my audience the story, and I'm really excited to see where you guys go from here. So thanks, Zach.
Well, yeah, thank you, Drew, for having me on. It was great to chat with you, and it's a fun full circle experience for me because you were one of the folks I watched on YouTube as I was getting into my health and nutrition journey. So, really appreciate the work that you do and the platform that you're creating. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. Thank you so much. Where do we want to send people to? Where can people find out about you? And then where do we want to send people to for the protein bars?
Yeah, so I'll start with David.
Yeah.
You can find David at davidprotein.com. Just That's our website where you can order bars and ship them around the country. You can follow us on LinkedIn, or sorry, on Instagram at David Protein, or on TikTok at David Protein as well. And then personally, my name is Zach Ranen. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram at Zach Ranen. But would love to see some folks trying the bars and excited to hear the feedback from everyone who does.
Yeah, we'll make sure and put all that in the show notes. And once again, Zach, really appreciate you coming on, and thanks for being here, man. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Absolutely.